Welcome back, loyal listeners, devoted fans, and casual observers to the Near Memo episode 266 today with Cyrus Shepard. I was going to inject something pithy and clever before your name, which is why I hesitated. Cyrus is the founder of Zyppy Marketing and long time SEO, now search and AI consultant, very visible figure in the SEO community, talking a lot about AI ranking and visibility these days. And this is the second installment of our series on brand building, brand and brand development. Last week we had John Jantz on, and we talked about what is the essence of building a small business brand. Today, what we want to talk about are some of the more technical aspects of brand building and how Google and AI understand brand and how you can improve your visibility there. And be sure and stick around till the end where we're going to go through a list of very practical, tactical recommendations for people to improve their visibility. So welcome, Cyrus, after that very long and rambling introduction.
Thanks, Greg. Mike, good to see you. Glad to be back. Always happy to talk to you guys.
Well, we're super happy to have you. And we know that you've been sort of practicing a silent meditation outside of the blogosphere of SEO. And we appreciate your re-entry on our show. So thank you.
Hello. I shaved for this, so let's do it.
And while we're at it, what other aesthetic practices have you adopted?
Well, I do laundry, once a week. I vacuumed this weekend, washed the sheets. Cleanliness and SEO go hand in hand.
All right.
With that, Greg is speechless. First time ever.
No. So let's jump into this kind of into the deep end. What does brand mean to Google?
That is such a good question. And brand has been part of Google since the beginning, because you think about Google, they have billions of websites they got to sort through, and they're all competing for attention. And there's most of those websites are spam. So Google has always leaned on brand a little bit or a lot to sort the garbage from the good stuff. And Eric Schmidt, the old CEO of Google, in 2008, I printed this out so I could get the quote right. Brands are the solution, he said, not the problem. Brands are how you sort the cesspool. And that is probably even more true today in 2026 than it was in 2028, when more and more businesses are competing for attention and SEO tactics have become commoditized. Google is looking for things that people are actually looking for in the real world. And Google wants to be a reflection of the real world. And brand is how they do it to a certain extent. To get into the other part of your question, what is a brand to Google? A brand is an entity. It's an entry in a database, and your website can have many such entities. Your website could be an entity. Your local business profile could be an entity. You could be an entity. And when we think of branding, we think about how those things connect together in those Google databases and how we can strengthen those relationships and become more prominent. So that, in a nutshell, is how Google thinks about it.
So it's purely a function of all of these elements: consistency, complete data, et cetera. There's not another aspect to Google's brand understanding?
Well, I think it's multidimensional, right? You named a couple of them: consistency, distinctiveness. Like if my business is named Thai food near me, do I mean the restaurant Thai food near me, or do I actually mean Thai food in general? And these are things that have been working in local SEO for a long time. There's reputation that can go into a brand. There's also the idea that we've learned a lot in the last few years, which is the demand side of things. How many people are actually looking for you? How many people are spending time on your website or your Google business profile? How many people are doing the driving direction thing to your business? The demand side of brand is what we've got a lot more evidence over the last few years than the other side.
So brand queries and also clicks and dwell time.
Yes.
And
exactly.
driving direction, as Cyrus pointed out. I mean, it's a really clear brand signal. If somebody lives 50 miles away from a business, there is a patent from 2013 where this is detailed extensively.
Yeah, we've known for a long time. We've done correlation studies for years and years and years in traditional SEO with regular websites, that the more people search for a website, the better it does in Google rankings. And we see this pattern over and over again. And Google has a few patents, quality scores, where they actually look for how many people are searching for you as a ratio of how many people are visiting your website. And if you can get more people searching for you specifically, that is one of the best SEO levers we know, whether you're doing local search or traditional SEO. That is the That is the golden egg of brand signals. How many people are specifically looking for you?
Let's talk about the behavioral signals a little bit. I mean, brand queries is one, but the great revelation of the antitrust trial was that, in fact, Google does rely very heavily on behavioral signals, something which they denied historically, vehemently, repeatedly. So talk a little bit about that. How does that show up?
Yeah, so Google has these database tables. They're called craps for the technically inclined. They literally call their click data craps. So when they say click data, it's a bunch of crap. That's probably what they mean. And in these database, they measure how many people are clicking on your website, how many impressions you're getting, good clicks versus bad clicks. I think we've discussed this on another episode. A bad click being someone clicks on your site and instantly moves away. A good click is when they stick around and they look at a lot of pages, things like that, compared to your competitors. And a satisfied click, where they come to your website and they don't go back to Google to look for something else. When we think of the average search journey, you look at a website, you go back to Google, you pick another website, or you do another question because you didn't get it quite right the first time. But when they end their journey, when they find what they're looking for, Google is really good at determining that a user has gotten what they're looking for. And if you can deliver that, that's a good ranking signal for you. We don't have evidence in the Google leak that they do this for Google business profiles, but I would highly assume that they do as well. Some of those same click signals.
Well, the interesting thing about Google Business Profile versus more general web search and click-through behavior is that very often in local, and this has been true kind of before the modern era of zero click, people will get their questions answered simply through the business profile, and they don't need to go to the website. People still do visit websites, but you can make certain kinds of determinations through looking at pictures, reading reviews, getting information that's on the profile, the hours, you can get directions, et cetera, et cetera. And so how does that differ or factor into this kind of consideration of user behavior in a brand context? I mean,
And particularly in the context of a declining, with AI overviews, a declining web presence that Google has so strongly relied on, how are they going to replace that with equivalent signal?
Yeah,
That's right.
that's an excellent question. And I think we have some indication that Google is using AI and machine learning to sort of guesstimate and model what actual users would do when they don't have the actual website traffic data. And
So a
I think it's
synthetic circle jerk, huh?
yeah, yeah, synthetic circle. I think it's important to remember, though, Google still has quite a bit of data. And I think what's important for people to realize is on our phones, most of us use a Chrome browser, whether even if we're using an Apple phone or an Android, we're searching. Chrome is the predominant web browser in the world. Billions of people use Chrome. Billions of searches, per day, trillions, I don't know what it is. And that's how they gather all of this data. They don't have to be on Google search because they have all that Chrome data, and they can measure every single thing that every user is doing, whether they're on Google Maps, searching a website. As long as they're using that Chrome browser, they have all of that data, and it's an incredible amount of data. So
You mean
everything that
that's
a
why
user
they
doing,
nag me every time I use Safari that I should be using the
yeah,
Google app?
yeah, yeah. So that Google has been declared a monopoly something like 6 times now. And the judges and the plaintiffs, the U.S. Antitrust Division has called for Google to lose access to that Chrome data, or Google should share Chrome data with all the competitors. And no court has agreed to that. And that is Google's moat. That's why they're a successful business, not because of search, because they have all that Chrome data.
Right.
That's what makes them valuable.
Well, so let me ask you this question about. So we've established that there are many signals that, from Google's point of view, establish brand trust, brand authority. What happens if you are a newer business or a smaller player that doesn't have the same kind of visibility, the same click history, et cetera? What do you do? How do you elevate yourself in that context?
So this is we were kind of talking beforehand about some of the traditional SEO things that people were doing 10 years ago, like NAP consistency, things like that. Weirdly, that has gotten a resurgence in the age of AI, because AI systems are looking for that same sort of consistency in relationships between these entities that traditional SEO was. So I think you have to start with the fundamentals, and I think a lot of people have kind of forgot the fundamentals because Google has gotten so good. So that's is your name consistent across multiple platforms? Do you have connected social media profiles across multiple platforms? Do they all
Where
connect
you
to your
have some
website?
activity that
Yeah,
can feed Google.
exactly. Are you using schema to properly identify yourself and distinguish yourself? Are you NAP consistency? Is your business referenced by third-party websites in a way that people can distinguish exactly who you are? And this works one way with Google and works kind of a different way with these new AI systems, but they're looking for the same sort of consistency signals. And simply what you say about yourself is so important. Do you have a page on your website? When I was discussing this with my wife, who's a graphic designer, and we realized she did not have a page on her website that actually laid out exactly what her services were, what they cost, what she can deliver. A lot of businesses don't do a very good job of explaining what they do, and so you can use AI now to answer these questions. Ask your AI, can you tell from my website exactly what I do and who I am and what my services are, and if not, recommend suggestions for me. So I'm kind of getting off track going down this rabbit hole of consistency, but I think it's a fundamental thing that we have to start to revisit a little bit because we've taken it for granted that Google just knows what we do and then they can figure it out on their own.
I have a question for you. So in
Yeah,
local, Google has always defined the problem of identifying brand within a map portal view.
yeah,
So they create a world that's limited by the query and the implied geospatiality of the query to say, okay, we only care about brands within this 3 or 5 or 10-mile radius. So in that context, it is a problem where it's small and you're up against other people within that sort of frame. Does AI change that? And if so, how? I've noticed that AI is much more flexible. Like, I don't remember, was Pigeon 2013, they reduced the radius pretty dramatically. So if there were 20 lawyers on a street corner, you would only go a quarter mile out on the map. But with AI, it seems to be expanding those boundaries. But do they, so I mean, again, we're trying to scale this down from Google's point of view. How do they see that world
yeah.
that
I,
you're
I
searching in?
I think that's an excellent question, Mike. I think one example, local relevance, like you would know much more about this than I do, but I think there's a phenomenon where Google can look at the reviews that a business gets and determine the location of the user who left that review. If you're reviewing a bakery in Oregon, does the reviewer live in India or New York, and count that review a lot less. But if you think about it as going back to the entity, going back to an entity within that local area, Google is probably looking at all those local signals much more. If you're a bakery and you're known for your cinnamon rolls, are people mentioning in your area, are they mentioning cinnamon rolls in their reviews much more than outside that area? I think AI though, when I think of local and chat GTP and all these others, I think they are not very great at local themselves and are leaning on Google's local ecosystem to pull a lot of this information, or Bing's local ecosystem, depending on the engineer.
Well, I mean, AI uses Yelp and strangely
Yeah,
MapQuest and all these third-party directories that nobody ever visits. And, that goes back to your basics of SEO, NAP consistency, and all of that stuff. AI seems to really lean very heavily on reviews as well. I mean, that has become a focal point for AI visibility.
Which accentuates this NAP consistency to the point where you should be getting reviews on Yelp and or TripAdvisor if they're relevant. And you should try to be on the best 10 list for your categories in your markets on those two sites, both of which do these top 10 algorithmic calculations based on how many reviews you have and acceleration reviews and total quantity reviews and rating. And if you can get that designation, I've seen that's golden both across the Google local ecosystem, Google AI overviews, Google AI mode, ChatGPT, and Claude. I mean, it's a,
yeah.
you know,
I, and I think we have to. It's obvious to a lot of people, but I think we have to recognize this fundamental shift in the before AI, it was just about ranking. You wanted to rank your website
right.
on the top. And today, that may not matter. You may rank number one, but AI doesn't recommend you because no one else is talking about you. So we have this shift where it's almost way more important now what other people are saying about you. These third-party sites we may have dismissed 5 years ago are increasingly relevant today, and because ranking may not save you.
Well, and what we've learned from our own research and from other research is that, people are talking about how the customer journey is fragmenting and it's getting more complicated. And that's true. It's sort of always been true, but often hidden from marketers because they fixated on Google. They don't necessarily see what comes before Google. And the same thing is kind of true now with AI, especially in local, is what we see is depending on the category, it's not true uniformly. People will include AI in the mix somewhere very often. Sometimes they start with it, sometimes they use it to compare something. And then at the end of the journey, typically you get a Google search, which is a brand search or search to validate with reviews or search for hours and directions, things that ChatGPT and Claude don't do as good a job with, although Claude's got the Google Maps API. That's what they're using for local. And so we do have this now, at least people are more aware of a kind of a multi-touch journey, which may include social, search, AI, and back and forth.
The other thing we see in our research, Cyrus, a lot is offline brand awareness
Yes.
totally kills it once they get someplace, right? Once
Yeah.
they get to Google or ChatGPT or wherever.
Yeah, I was going to bring that up. And so what we see in our research on personal injury lawyers in particular, but it can be generalized, is when there is prior awareness of a particular brand, we watch people search and we watch people interact with ads and with organic content. The prior awareness has a very, very powerful influence on their clicks, whether it's an ad or whether it's an organic listing. And very often, at least in the PI injury context, prior awareness comes from offline ads, right?
Yeah.
So what would you say about the role of any kind of offline marketing, advertising in this whole process?
That's an excellent question, because I think we have to think outside of traditional search channels. I don't know if you saw the research from iPullRank, Garrett Sussman. They did some
Yes.
they
We
did some interesting things with email, where they would email their customers with positive brand mentions embedded in the email, and then track how often those brands appeared in Gemini and AI overviews. And simply emailing information about yourself increase the likelihood that you're going to be recommended by AI because of personalization.
right.
So which is
Gee,
fascinating.
Google's control of mail seems to align with your thesis. Are they going to have to give up data that they've scraped from Gmail as well
Yeah,
as data they've
great.
scraped from Chrome?
Great question. Probably not. I don't know if a lot of people know this. Anyone who shops on Amazon, Amazon typically doesn't put your purchase details in the email. They'll say something like your health and wellness product to ship, because Amazon doesn't want Google to scrape the data knowing exactly what you bought. But we can leverage this, and we can email our customers with our own brand information and allow Google to scrape it, and try to get more AI recommendations that way. But
Don't give
prior
Amazon
brand,
any ideas. They'll charge for the business to put the brand mention in the email.
yeah,
It'll be an
It
ad
beca-
format.
yeah. There we go.
Yeah, it becomes an advertising thing. Well, that was we did interview Garrett, and we had a 2-part interview, and that was very fascinating discussion about personalization. And in order for that phenomenon that you described to have an impact, you had to opt into Google's personalization. But subsequently, so that was the precondition for the email specific lift that you're describing. But as you say, Google has so much data that they're drawing upon all kinds of things. I mean, is there a distinction in your mind between, we talk about AI and we talk about search, but those categories are breaking down because of what Google is doing in search with AI overviews and increasingly AI mode. Is there a distinction in your mind between the world of ChatGPT, Claude, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, and Google now with all the AI pieces that they're bringing together? Or is Google just now part of this whole AI phenomenon? Are there concrete things about Google that are distinct?
Yeah, I think there are. And I think what we're seeing is, within the AI system, there's levels of information. One, are you in the core training data? If AI wasn't connected to the internet, would they recommend your brand? And that's level one. But increasingly, the AI systems are relying on Google search and increasingly relying on Bing search There's a lot of evidence that's come out in the last few weeks that OpenAI is transitioning more and more to Bing in their own internal
There's
search results.
there is a distinction, apparently, at least for the present, between ChatGPT and Claude in terms of how quickly they go to web search. ChatGPT apparently goes much more quickly to web search than Claude does. Claude answers many more questions with its own training data. That's just a little footnote, but keep going.
No, that's an excellent point. And I think more and more the early AI systems just answered, and we were getting all sorts of hallucination. And then everybody hated that. So now they're grounding everything in real world search results, which makes traditional SEO so much more important, trying to get yourself mentioned in those, top ranking 20 results and all the fan out queries and everything else like that. Then we have the real world signals that Google and their vast databases. I was just thinking of the idea of QR codes, on restaurant menus. The idea that if you can get your customer to scan a QR code, Google saw that you visited that website and you're going to show up more in personalization and things like that. So anytime we have this entire ecosystem, it just grows and grows and grows of real world data, training data, everything else like that. But ultimately, we need to remember that Google and all these AI systems are trying to mimic or reflect the real world through some sort of editorial process. And that's what we need to be doing more and more, getting ourselves out there in the real world.
But you wrote a great article on content that sort of reinforces the desire of Google to see users coming to your site. Could you sort of tie that in here?
Yeah. Are we talking about the click signals a bit?
Well, I think you wrote you wrote several,
It was-
I think, on this topic. But
I think it was about content that breaks through, that where people are getting more visibility from the content as opposed to being filtered out because it's too generic or something.
Yeah, exactly. So the old SEO model, and this worked until very recently, just the last couple of years, is you could write content on any topic and get it to rank and get traffic for that. There's this idea of topical authority and things like that. But Google built a machine that can magically produce content on any topic it wants. Gemini, an AI. So Google doesn't want content anymore. Google wants things that, add distinct value. They want perspectives, human perspectives. That's what we see user generated content exploding. Like Rick Steves' travel forum is a great example, Reddit, things like that. So they're not looking for information anymore. They're looking for distinct information and distinct content types. So things like original research, product pages, things that AI are very good at, tools, calculators, in-depth reviews and testing, things like that. So it's shifted from content to what makes you distinct that nobody else on the internet can offer. And so we see a lot of zombie sites now littering the internet with hundreds or thousands of pages of informational content that they're just dragging around like a dead foot.
So let's say you're a Linux air conditioner expert in a given market. Obviously, there's hundreds or even thousands of Linux experts, but in your market, you're one of maybe two or three. How would you leverage that sort of specific situation for this context?
Yeah. So in the old days, we would see a lot of people producing generic content around Linux furnaces, things like that, what to look for when buying a Linux furnace. And thousands of websites can provide that information. What Google would rather have now is they want to know the people behind the business. So owner interviews talking about, with video, discussing exactly how they approach problems, their opinions on things,
Their certification, perhaps.
certifications, yeah. Things that make that individual distinct. So
You
don't
mentioned
need to
video specifically. Could you elaborate on that as well?
Yeah, exactly. Video so talk about YouTube channels, bringing video in, connecting people. If I owned if I was doing SEO for a Linux business like this, I would record myself, start producing short form video with transcripts. One of the biggest sources of AI training data for Google is YouTube transcripts. They went through this entire process of transcribing all their videos a few years ago simply for that AI training data. And doing that, just bringing the human perspective in as opposed to producing generic content.
So let me push back a little bit on this and
Okay.
challenge it. So in a situation like this Linux example, let's say I don't have central air and I've decided to get central air in my house. I really don't know what the considerations are, right? I don't know anything about cost. I don't know anything about the machines that I need, who the competitors are, pricing, and I want to learn all about all of that. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go to ChatGPT or Claude or my favorite AI tool, which is not AI mode in my case. And I'm going to ask a bunch of questions to educate myself before I start talking to any particular business. How much, how big, what do I need to be aware of? What are the pitfalls? What are the questions I should ask? How much do I need to spend? What about my duct sizes? All these things. And I'm going to learn through an iterative process to refine and refine and refine. That content is coming from someplace.
Yes.
And, there are SEOs who say abandon the top of the funnel because of exactly what you described. But just to be devil's advocate, don't I want to be answering some of those customer questions
Yeah.
in order?
Absolutely. I think there's room. I think there's room in this world for both our perspectives. And what I would argue is you can still produce that content, but the difference is today I would advocate to make it personal. Instead of the generic, these are the top things to consider, I would produce an article like these are the top 10 things I look for based on my 28 years of experience. And these are the good furnaces. These are the bad furnaces. I think this is crap.
And how it relates to your specific climate, for example.
Yeah, exactly. And here is the data to back it up that nobody else has. So I think there's room for both.
So what you're saying then is make, top of the funnel content still has some value as a discovery mechanism, but make it very specific, as Mike is saying, to the geography or to personal experience, grounded in concrete information, much more than just platitudes and kind of generic listicle stuff.
I think the shift is what AI systems are looking for today is evidence. They have everything in their corpus, their training data, but when they're grounding and citing things and ranking things, they're looking for people who can bring the evidence that something beyond general knowledge or perspective, the personal perspective, which Google mentions all the time now. What does this person think about things? What does their expertise say?
Let me ask you specifically about pricing. You mentioned this with your wife and her website. One of the things that Kevin Indig has talked about is if you don't have pricing data, pricing information, the AI tool is going to go to some third party and try and find that, and it may be inaccurate. A lot of businesses don't want to necessarily expose pricing information either because it's very specific to the job or because they're fearful of competitive, considerations. How do you handle that? What's your recommendation about pricing on your website?
Yeah, I think you want to own your own pricing information because, as you said, if you don't own it, someone else is going to own it. They're going to go to Reddit or some other third party site. So you want to own as much as you can. I understand it's a business model for a lot of places. They want the leads, they want the call for specific pricing. You might try a range if you're not if you can't win that argument with your executives. We start at $5,000, up to so and so. Call for a specific quote, things like that. But at least have a pricing page so you show up and rank for it. So give the system something to pull from. So you're not completely giving over to third party sites where you have no control.
So let's just, as we sort of come
Just
to
a quick question, Greg. What was the name of the company that produces the internal data that we talked to a couple of weeks ago? True Signal is a product that goes into your internal system and extracts all of the data as to the types of jobs you did, the categories, the
Customer
pricing,
loyalty.
the customer loyalty, how many return customers,
right,
average price, all this stuff, and then makes it available both as an independent third-party assessment and makes it available on your site. It went back through the customer management
We'll
system.
put it in the show notes on two levels. One on the level that Mike is describing, which is an additional source of data that you otherwise might not have access to, that will help discoverability in an AI context. And the other, in my mind, was as an alternative to reviews. Right, there are
Yeah.
other signals that indicate quality or
Time to
credibility.
response. That's right.
Right, customer retention, customer loyalty, that kind of stuff. It was very interesting. He's got a two-sided
Yeah.
marketplace problem or whatever.
I,
Not
I
exactly.
I think a lot of people are missing out on this evidence layer. And if a local business just fires up ChatGPT and asks basic questions about your business pricing, your reputation, and seeing, do you own the answer or does somebody else own the answer? Where
Right.
is it getting its information from? And a lot of times you'll find that you're not providing anything for these AI systems to latch onto. And going back to the basics and building these pages out, so you are the authoritative source. They want to trust you. You have to give them the information.
Well, so distinguish what you just described from third-party mentions and talk about how important third-party mentions are in this AI visibility world, because a lot of companies are doing these self-referential listicles. Here are the 10 best, but of course we're the best, and that worked for a while, and now there's evidence that it's not working anymore. What is your approach to disseminating your information across third-party sites beyond directories, or soliciting third-party mentions? What's your general advice about that?
Yeah, they are hugely important. And the self-serving listicles don't work like they did a year ago, which is great. But all these systems are still relying on links and mentions from across the web. And the better visibility you have in those third party, especially what you'll find when you search for something in AI is they will go to oftentimes very specific sources. So if you're researching software, they'll go to G2, and so you want to make sure you have good representation on G2. If you're looking for a consumer product, they might go to Reddit, so you want to make sure that you're referencing Reddit really well. So it is hugely important, and Google is trying to figure out the spam problem they have with listicles and self-serving things and going to authoritative sources. I don't think that's changed very much, but it's become oddly way more important than it used to be. But I'm going to go back to what I said earlier. What oftentimes no one's mentioning you, and so what you say about yourself fills that hole. When we're talking about the pricing example, these AI systems and Google is going to trust what you say about yourself more than the third parties, and oftentimes we're just not providing it. So you got to make sure that you're filling those holes, do that analysis, that content gap, and worry about what you're saying about yourself first before you worry about what third parties are saying.
We've been talking about tactical things throughout here, but let's move into some practical advice that you haven't given now about Google's understanding of brand, AI's understanding of brand, and what you as a business need to specifically do to make those things clear to Google. And one of the areas that we haven't talked about is your website. Do you need to do something different technically now with your website, llm.txt, Markdown, something technical to make yourself more visible or accessible to Google
I
and
don't
to AI?
Yeah, there is a little bit of evidence that websites in Markdown are a little bit easier to read for AI systems, but I think the difference is pretty minor, and I don't think it's worth it for most businesses to actually invest a lot of resources into things like LLM text files and Markdown and things like that.
So you're saying make it readable to the human. If it's readable to the human, it's good enough.
Yeah, that's exactly.
What about JavaScript though? Because apparently Google's the only one that reads JavaScript.
Yeah, systems are really bad at rendering JavaScript, or they just don't do it, or they rely on Google to do it. So again, going back to keep your answers. Don't build websites that rely on server-side rendering or client-side rendering. Sorry, I switched the two. Make sure you're delivering HTML to folks because the JavaScript has been problematic for 20 years, and it's still a little problematic even today. And we have the solutions. You don't need to do it. You don't need to serve JavaScript websites.
Well, so we threw you off a little bit, or I threw you off there. So we're marching down a list of tactical things that you need to do to show up as a brand. Again, not just sort of visibility, but as a brand, to be understood as a brand by Google, Google AI, and by ChatGPT, et cetera.
I have an idea that I want to run by you, Cyrus. I want you to vote it up or down, okay? Because I have not had the
Okay.
wherewithal to test it. So everybody asks for reviews, but most people use Google's review link, which they obviously give them and can track. So it takes them right to the review box, so it's more convenient for the customer. So my proposal would be, instead of doing that, just give people a brand search to Google and allow them to click on the review link. Given that Google can track the link they're giving you, and given that they don't know where this brand query comes from, if you give it to them, do you think that would work at building Google's sense of brand in the local market?
Yeah,
In
I
other
think it would
words-
have a marginal effect. I don't think I'd rely on it as a core foundational search. I think Google is looking at a lot of information.
But again, we're
I think
looking in a very narrow window here of the map portal,
yeah,
right? So it's
exactly.
much smaller. So the impact
Yeah.
is probably More or less the same.
It's probably a little more. I think it's important to remember that these traffic signals, these click signals and everything, they're pretty hard to move because Google's looking at all the data. They're looking at 13 months worth of clicks.
Well, you
So you're looking at thousands of searches usually for any given business. Go
You,
ahead,
you,
Greg.
I just wanted to interject. So you get these kind of occasional experiments where the employees are select driving directions to their company. They drive to their company. They show up at their company, and there have been people that have done these kinds of things, or get a bunch of volunteers to do this, and that has had a positive impact on visibility.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, that's a gimmicky kind of thing, but what is your view of that?
No, it can be a snowball effect. For a business that has no visibility, it can work. For an established business, it's probably short lived, and you'd probably have to do it over and over and over again.
Well, but if you're really truly a service area business, but you have a address and nobody really drives to it in real life, what do you think? I mean, what do you
I don't think it
then?
would have any effect at all if you're a service area business like that. In that situation,
Well, a service
you
area
simply
business with an address, though. So there is an address, but most people are not selecting it because you.
yeah,
People are.
in that situation, you want to do anything you can to get your brand visibility out there. And we talked about, Greg, offline demand, billboards. People see your billboard, they Google search you, and you can tell people on the billboard, Google search us, and then they're clicking on your website. So that's a classic example of how offline visibility can drive SEO demand. The QR codes, again, you have flyers up all over town. Scan this QR code for our event.
Scan this QR code for a plumber that'll show up on time.
Yeah, exactly. Commercials, anything you can do to drive that offline visibility onto the website and have Google start to associate those things and strengthen those brand connections.
I mean, that can show up in two ways. It can show up as a direct brand search, or it can show up as a click, a latent kind of click without a brand search. Like I'm searching for a plumber. I saw the plumber's truck with the logo and the, smiling plumbers on the side of it. When I see the organic link or an ad, I remember it. Oh, yes, I know those guys. And I click on it, but I didn't do a brand search. So that's another way that can show up.
Yeah, I would have to imagine we haven't talked about phone calls at this point. I would have to imagine that Google probably doesn't know exactly who you're calling all the time, but if they're clicking that call button on their phone within your Google business profile, that is a positive signal. So anything you can do to generate demand in that way, getting more people simply to call your business, because Google can track that.
Okay, so
just quick interjection here. Last week, John Jentz recommended an idea that I thought was interesting. It was about word of mouth referrals, where an electrician, a plumber, and a roofer all work together and they do a job. They then give out a card for 10% discount for the other businesses, right? So the plumber says, oh, if you don't have a good, whatever, house cleaner, maybe you should call this guy. One, that would work well for word of mouth, but is there a way to bring that back into the digital world that would perhaps generate enough volume that you could see an impact? And then, so part two of that is the snowball effect. You said maybe if you're a new business, you might do these driving directions yourself. But does the snowball effect lead to higher visibility? And does higher visibility then lead to greater brand interactions?
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. And I want to talk about the second part of the question first.
Okay.
I have a local coffee shop that I go to, and they've been around for 3 years, and I absolutely love them. And they had no Google reviews, maybe 4 or 5. So we did the classic QR code, put on their counter, and everybody was encouraged to leave a review, and they are awesome. So everybody was leaving 5-star reviews. And then once they hit the 20, 25 reviews, the snowball effect started happening, and they started ranking better in Google Maps. And we have a foot traffic count. So people are searching for coffee shops because they're hard to find, and people start walking to this particular coffee shop. And then everything just started working after that because people are Googling them, they're going to that coffee shop, they're leaving the room, and it just grows and grows and grows. So there is a flywheel effect that happens once you get this process going.
Okay, so go ahead.
Let him answer the first part of the question.
Well, yeah, the first part of the question, the word of mouth recommendations, putting that in a real world context, like I can imagine if I had a page on my website that was, we recommend these local businesses, and I was one of the local businesses being recommended, that would be gold for AI systems and Google search in general. And you could network that. You could recommend each other, but that personal recommendation, that would be huge for
And the card you hand out could take people to that page
Yeah.
where they could redeem their coupon or whatever.
Yeah, exactly. Just a simple blurb on a third-party site in your local area, that's gold. That's so much more valuable than a directory listing or
So that's a local visibility tactic or a local SEO tactic that I have not heard anybody talk about, which is groups of businesses coming together. I mean, other than John's recommendation last week, groups of businesses coming together to create a kind of network and point to each other. I mean, not in a manipulative way, but in a sincere way. Here's some great, local businesses, blah, blah, blah. That's a very interesting strategy or tactic.
I had an idea around that where an engagement company and a wedding dress company and a venue all work together for sort of a, what do you call those things? A scavenger hunt where people would have to get driving directions to each location, prove that they went to each location at that location, and then they would be entered in some sort of drawing that they could win an engagement wedding dress and a venue or something. Never had a chance to implement it but I just thought, there's a way of bringing that idea of, outside inside or real
I
world
love it.
digital.
I love it. How about a horrible idea? Yeah, you just order a lot of pizzas, and the drivers are going to enter the direction to your business all the time.
Well, you could have once a week a pizza for your employees, and
Yep.
all of that.
Our Google Maps is showing we're really busy at 5 p.m. on Friday because we ordered so many pizzas.
Right.
And partner with a liquor store as well.
Yep.
So it's twice as much fun.
Okay, so let's use your coffee shop as a model. Let's assume they're a new business, newer than 3 years, not the particular coffee shop that you talked about, but an analogous coffee shop, cafe. They've recently opened. What are the things that they need to do to generate the digital signals to start ranking in AI and on Google, and distinguish those if they're different things? What are the just very specific tactical things to build and strengthen their brand? Let's frame it that way, not an SEO conversation, even though there's a lot of overlap.
Yeah. So I'm worried that this information is going to sound too basic. But basically, you always start off with a Google search, is your business on the map? Those very foundational local SEO signals. Do you have a website? Is it connected? Are your social media profiles connected? Are you listed in the basic directories where AI is going to look for your business? And are you represented well there? So all those traditional signals that we've been kind of ignoring for a little while because we thought Google was really good at it, I think we need to revisit the basics and make sure everything is tightened up.
And something in that vein that Darren suggested was that in each of these third-party directories, you have a different description that includes additional or varied information about your business.
Yeah. But you also want to leave the breadcrumbs so that we have the consistency.
Right.
They all point to the same website, and my business name is the same in all of them so that the AI systems understand we are talking about this entity that is important. The other thing is the relevance. So we sort of talked about this. What are you known for? If you're a bakery known for cinnamon rolls, you want your web page to talk about cinnamon rolls. You want cinnamon rolls in your business description.
And
you want
pictures,
your reviews to say
pictures of cinnamon
pictures.
rolls.
We didn't discuss images. The evolution of Google and image SEO, we used to rely on alt tags to tell Google what a photo was about. Google can get so much information from your photos now. It's just ridiculous. And I so encourage some of the mid-sized businesses that I work with. One of the biggest recommendations I have is hire a professional photographer just to come around your business and take pictures of you, your products, everything that you're doing, because Google can identify those things. They can extract entities from your photos. So that can be harder if you don't have the resources, but owning those photos yourself and putting them on your website and your Google business profile.
Take that one step further. You should be taking pictures of every branded product you sell, and including that both in your Google profile as well as your website.
Yeah. Take the pictures of the cinnamon rolls, put them on there.
Or take the pictures of the Nike sneakers and put them on there. Or whatever brands you're selling. If you're an AC company, then all of your AC brands should be shown, perhaps in situ with the brand label showing, right? So that Google can see that you're installing a Lennox air conditioner and on site. So they see that you're providing the service and you're using the brand.
Yeah, and it's and a minor point. I encourage people to put themselves in the photos. If you're camera shy, put your hands, put your employees if you can. That can be a gray area, but put
Just like
re-
this.
yeah, real human photos of you interacting with your product or your customers interacting with the product, because AI systems and Google are looking for authenticity. They're looking for real human perspectives.
A minor variation on that idea, you can't incentivize reviews, but you could incentivize clients to post pictures of themselves
Yes.
with your product.
Yes.
Yes.
Totally legal, totally
On-
legit, and would do equally well in terms of user-generated content.
on
that Google likes.
social media,
On social
or
and on Google.
to send them in to you.
Yeah.
And on Google, yeah.
I leave a lot of Google reviews for local businesses here. And I sometimes, when I look at my stats, my photo stats, my sharing stats, I notice that the photos that I am personally in always do better than the generic photos of food or things like that. So I think that's a great suggestion, Mike.
Well, this
encouraging
could be
social-
unique to you, Cyrus. I mean, there
No,
is
no,
something like,
Yeah. But people enjoy authentic experiences of real humans. So we talked about being distinctive, we talked about being relevant, and then we have the reputation angle, which we discussed a few different ways. What are the third party sites saying about you? You see this with hotels a lot. You check into a hotel, they recommend local businesses. Who are the restaurants in the area? Who do we recommend? I really liked your idea, Mike, of the sort of local review ecosystem. Who are we recommending in our area that's well, and just building your reputation that way through all the review tactics we talked about. Again, very classic stuff, but authenticity more than anything that can be scaled is so important. And then the fourth part, I think, is demand. How many people are actually searching for you online? How many people are clicking on your website? And are you satisfying their experience? Are you owning those? And I think if you do all those four things well, you can grow your brand, in Google and AI.
Well, and the offline stuff can generate a lot of searches. You can, through event marketing or through advertising if you have the budget, through these local cross-referenced referrals, you can generate demand online that will then feed into this brand signal phenomenon.
In fact, you could argue that some of those are more important than the online things that you do. If people are really genuinely looking for you all the time, Google doesn't care if you have a website that's not optimized. They're going to deliver your website to those users. So, yeah, genuine demand.
I mean, I think offline event marketing is underrated as a digital visibility tactic, because it does then translate into online visibility.
But you have to make a conscious decision that you want it to translate. QR code's a good example, right? Encouraging people to get some coupon by visiting your site or leaving a review, right? I think you have to tie the two together. So the event
Well, you
becomes digital.
could, sure, I think so. You could do a promotion where you say, search our website, search for us with this specific keyword, or however you have it set up, a subdomain to get access to a coupon to give you a discount to the admission to the event, or give you a free drink, or whatever it is.
So search Near Media with the name Cyrus Shepard, and you too will win something.
Yeah, I'm thinking about our coffee shop again.
To be determined.
I'm thinking about our coffee shop again, and we had a great success with the review QR codes, but I'm wondering what could we do also within the shop with QR codes or whatever to get people to open up the website, look at, an art installation, or get a instant coupon that we can redeem at the counter, or just anything to get people signing up for the newsletter, anything we can do to get interacting with our website, maybe our email list, anything like that, to bring them into our ecosystem and expand our brand footprint.
So here's an idea for that. You take a QR code and you stick it in a particularly aesthetic looking spot of your site. They go to the QR code and you say, gee, we really would like if you just took a picture of this and send it along. So somehow tie the two together.
All these Instagram spots where people set up photo spots, just make sure you have your QR code embedded in the Instagram spot. Yeah, funny.
All right, Mike, any other questions for Cyrus?
No, I just want to thank you for coming out of Hermitage to join us. And it's really always a pleasure to speak with you. And we will speak again someday, hopefully sooner rather than later.
Thanks, guys. Always a pleasure talking to you. My mind's a buzzing with my coffee shop now.
All right.
Well, I think there were a lot of
posted.
Yes, a lot of great ideas in this session. Thank you very much, as Mike said, for joining us. And we will have you on again at some point in the indefinite future.
All right, looking forward to it.
Okay, but.